Find out how to build a zoo in Cities Skylines 2. Hello everyone, welcome back to episode number 3 of my detailing series. And it's another fun episode today as we create a zoo. So I want to start off by crediting and shouting out Dome, who is the creator who figured all of this out. And I will be using a lot of his techniques throughout the build. He shared a really great comprehensive guide on the Cities Skylines Modding Discord server, which I've linked in the video's description. You can find out how to create farms and stables in CS2, and how to add spawners for animals to appear. So being inspired by Dome's method to create farms, I thought why don't we try adapting his techniques and see if we can also create a zoo. So I'm going to be sharing a few other cool tips and tricks with you in this video, which you might not have seen before, so make sure you watch it all the way through to catch all of the cool new things. I've also recently shared early access to my first texture pack, Realistic Rivers, over on my Discord and Patreon. So if you want early access, I've linked both of these in the video's description, and I've also supplied a guide to show you what to do. Official release will be on Thunderstore, but it's still a few weeks away. They will be launching alongside Extra Landscaping Tools 3.0. And goddamn, am I excited to show you the new tools and features which are dropping with this mod update. Okay, so with the admin out of the way, let's get into today's build. I'm going to start off with the first of a number of techniques I will share with you today. So as we all know, service buildings such as schools and police stations, they all have upgrades and extensions which come with the asset. For example, the university comes with a library and a park area, and I'd like to use them in this build, but I don't actually want the university's main building, just the upgrades. So we are actually able to plot these sub-buildings without the main building. But what you can't do is rotate these sub-buildings. If you try that, they'll just disappear. But there is a little trick we can do, which is to first select the main building. We can then rotate that to the direction we want the sub-building to appear. If you press then Escape and select the sub-building, you'll now see the sub-building is now aligned to the rotation we had on the main building. The library, this is going to be the main entrance building of the zoo. Now these buildings don't actually require road access or even utilities, so you are free to plot them wherever you wish. They technically don't function like the university, but if the upgrade has bonuses attached to them, then these will still apply. Citizens won't necessarily even visit these buildings, but if there are hang around or walking areas, like they are in this park area, then citizens will still come and visit. So next, I want to use this manicured grass texture throughout the build, which comes with the ELT Surfaces extension mod. If I'm being totally honest, it's just too bright and saturated, especially in contrast to the vanilla grass. So I did make a few little tweaks for this build, just to get something a bit more closer to the grass, which in my opinion looks a lot more natural. The park is going to be the main centralised area of the zoo, and all attractions will then feed off of this park. So the first main attraction I'm adding to the zoo is the botanical garden asset, but in this case I see this more like a butterfly garden, or perhaps it has some exotic birds or reptiles inside. I then get started on the car parks and detailing the main entrance areas using the custom parking I did a tutorial on in a previous video. If you haven't seen that, please go check it out. You can also see me here using an invisible pedestrian path through the main building. I also used the same technique I used for the university library and park, and I'm now plopping down an elementary school playground. It's another good asset which we're now able to plop without the school. This is such an awesome technique which I've now learned and I'm sure I'll use more of in future. And then just doing a bit of basic detailing with my surfaces, a few trees and props, and creating like a food court area with some food stalls and some seating areas. Okay, and now on to the next new thing I recently found out about. So in past videos, you've probably seen me using the dev UI to plop down billboards and signs. But they're just white, they have no branding, which is just super annoying. So I downloaded the Find Stuff mod by Cities Modding. If we use this mod and search for billboards or stands, then we do now have access to these assets with branding on them, which is just such a great addition to the game. But boy, are there a lot of them. There must be at least 100 branded signs for each asset, which is just incredible, and it will bring so much realism and life to the zoo. Great, so let's get first animals into the zoo. This will be like a petting zoo with some chickens, pigs and cows. The first asset we need are called hang-around areas. So this will stop the animals walking away and kind of contain them to the area. Do you want to divide your overall space up into a few smaller zones? The animals do move from like one corner to another within the area. So if we divide the space up, we can make it look like they're more spread out. The second asset we need are animal spawners. As you can see here, we have a whole bunch of different animals. Now only certain animals will actually remain in the hang-around areas. So if I placed like a bear, a deer, or any of the more wild animal spawners in one of these areas, they'll just kind of walk off. But if we place a farm animals, such as chickens, cows, horses, and pigs in these areas, then they will stay contained within the area. You can place a few spawners in the area to add more animals. And if you ever want to delete these spawners, you can do that with the Better Bulldozer mod. You know what, even with the limited animals we have available, I think we can still make the zoo work, but you know, we might need to get creative, maybe use our imagination a little to make this work. So next we move on to building an aquatic area. And there's a bit of a theme in this episode, and that's repurposing. So to repurpose an asset into something completely different. And it's something you'll be seeing me do throughout most of my builds. So we have the community pool and the water park assets, and we're going to turn them into a dolphin show, perhaps a seal show or something like that. Of course, these are ridiculously small, but as you know, we have very limited tools to work with, so we're doing the best we can with the tools we have available. You can see I've been covering up the smaller pool and the diving board with this little cafe and a few props and a bit of custom signage. You can see I'm also trying the dolphin spawner in the hang-around area. Unfortunately, the dolphins will just kind of leave the area. You do get new ones appearing every now and again, which just gives a nice little extra effect. And now we're on to repurposing assets again. Of course, we don't have zoo assets, so we do need to think outside the box and be creative. And we have this campsite here, which I think would be absolutely perfect for some more wild animal enclosures. You can see me using the tree controller mod quickly just to make all of the trees adult sizes. Ideally, I want all of the trees to be matching, so let's swap them out for the same type. Right, that's better. Now they're all matching. But at the moment, there's just too many trees. We kind of want to be able to see the animals ideally. So I'm going to show you a trick to delete objects inside of buildings using developer mode. So first, open up the dev mode menu and go to the simulation tab. Here, locate and tick debug toggle. So next, go to the UI bindings tab and open the drop-down called Action section. Now you can select the individual object which is inside of a building which you want to remove. And then come back to the menu here and click delete, and you can see that object has now been removed. So now I'm able to go through and delete any object I want. Once done, come back to the simulation tab and untick debug toggle. So this is quite a useful tip to know for detailers who want a bit more customization of their buildings. So we've cleared this space now and we have a nice view to see the animals. So these will be for more wild animals. So I'm just putting up a few extra security fences and safety around the habitats. I'm also replacing the vanilla texture with my textures to create a more natural look. These, as I mentioned earlier, are available right now as early access on my Patreon and Discord. Links are in the description. Okay, so earlier I did tell you that we're going to need to use our imagination a little with this build. So just go with me here if you can. So back on the theme of repurposing, I'm now going to repurpose cows as lions. Now, from a distance, I can believe that this could be a lion. Yeah, if you go closer and zoom in, it's obviously a cow. But from a distance, I think I could get on board with thinking this is a lion. And if you think that's stupid, well, you're certainly not going to like these next two. So we're also going to be using horses as giraffes, which I think works okay. They have the long necks and orangey colour. And finally, we're going to be using pigs as rhinos. Yeah, this is a little silly, I know, but it doesn't actually bother me. I think when you view them from a distance, I think it's okay. And of course, we're just doing the best we can with the limited tools. This one is a bit stupid also, and mainly just because I was running out of usable assets, but I'm now repurposing the skate park into another petting zoo. This one is pretty random, yes. I'm not quite sure what these objects are for, but I kind of like it, and you know, it's just another slightly different thing to do.
Floating, weightless, undersea, diving, conscious, like a dream. You and me.
Okay, so again, and here's that word repurposing again. So I think we could turn this American football stadium into a horse track or showground. We can again use the dev mode to bob off some of these assets, like the pitch markings, which just gives us a nice blank slate to use here. So now I'm putting in some jumps and a track and a few surfaces, and then eventually I'll add in all of the hang around areas and horse spawners.
Like these frozen.
So I'm just going to do a little extra work now on the main park area in the centre of the zoo. I think it would be nice to put in a small cafe here and information centre. This building unfortunately won't be connected to any roads. Next, I move on to a small go-kart track. Now, I don't know if you noticed at the start of the episode that I'm building the zoo on the same map as my Silverstone Formula 1 racetrack, which was back in episode 1. So I think it would make sense that the zoo have a go-kart track to attract racing enthusiasts in the area. I remember after that build saying I didn't want to place another barrel in this game again. At this time with mods, honestly, it was like a 10-minute job, something which took me multiple hours without mods. So next I want to shout out Rafterman for this inspiration. He built an awesome stadium on YouTube, I'll link it in the description. I really liked how he had the bottom layer sunk into the ground, so I thought I'd try that in the zoo, kind of like an amphitheatre. Now looking back, I have made this way too small, especially once I use the cliff technique, it just makes it even smaller. But I think it still looks good. Once you've gone so far, sometimes it is too late to change it, so we'll just have to make do. But the cliff technique really is working well, it just makes it feel a bit more interesting. I then add in a small lake and some more hangaround areas and spawners. Then adding in another small restaurant area, and go quite heavy on the signage and foliage. So in this second enclosure, perhaps this is for tigers. Again, it's come out a little too small, but we're just having a bit of fun with this build, not taking it too seriously. So the zoo build is progressing well. We're almost complete now. Just the last attraction to get in. So I found this Asian themed unique building and thought this would make an excellent addition to the build. Perhaps this could be home to red pandas or snow monkeys. Again, I'm using the sunken amphitheatre seating area, which is a really great effect. Cool, so there's just a bit of final detailing to come to finish off the build. So I'll leave you all with a final time lapse now, and we'll come back at the end for final live play, and I'll show you around the completed zoo. Okay, so welcome back, and we're here for a live play as we close out today's episode. So that was a really fun build, one which didn't take me weeks to complete, just a few days, which was a nice change from the previous 2 episodes. I think this one was perhaps the most creative in terms of having to think outside of the box, finding ways to make this work with limited assets. So let me show you around. So you can see I've done a bit of work on the surrounding farms and adding animals to the fields. I also absolutely love the branding now on the signage, thanks to the Find Stuff mod. Such a great addition to the game. Like I said, there's just so many of them, just some really cool brands and advertisements. The main entrance building is of course the university's upgrade, the library, but in the case of the zoo I have changed the name to Manor House. In the UK, sometimes big estates and manor houses do become tourist attractions, Now I imagine this building not just to be the main reception, but also a gift shop and cafe. Maybe upstairs is also an art gallery and museum. We then have some more buildings here, which would be like the offices and maintenance buildings to support the zoo's operations. And then the main central park of the zoo, so all the main attractions will feed off this central point. The updated grass texture is also looking a lot more natural here and closer in tone to the vanilla grass. We've also got a cafe and information centre in the middle, but as you can see this isn't connected to a road, so we do have a bunch of notifications about this building, but providing there's only one or two of these around, it really doesn't bother me too much. You can see I've tried to add a fair amount of detailing around to really bring these areas to life. So next we have the elementary school's upgrade building, the playground. This is using the trick at the start of the episode. Then we have the outdoor gym and a food court and toilets. Next we have the botanical garden asset. You can see I've named this the butterfly garden. Maybe this is also home to some exotic birds or reptiles. At the back is also a cool little garden maze, which works well in a zoo setting. And then we have the aquatic area of the zoo. So these both came out very cool, I think. Obviously we are working with very limited assets, so the pools are definitely smaller than I'd like. So we need to change the naming of this to Dolphin Show. I think this repurposing trick works very well, especially now thanks to Ploppable Rico, as we can overlap buildings. You can see I've hidden the smaller pool with this cafe and a few billboards. So I didn't get to show you any of this build earlier on, unfortunately, like it just didn't record. But I also repurposed the water park asset into another aquatic show. I managed to hide the water slides again with another building and billboards just to cover them up. So I did call this one a seal show. And then we have the go-kart track, again so much faster thanks to mods, so this whole thing didn't take too long at all, especially in comparison to episode number 1. A few junk cars here and a bit of a covered area as the entrance. Just being able to do these barrels again with Propline tool was actually just quite funny, just how quick it was. I think this is also good as another attraction and something a bit different for the zoo to attract tourists. I'm also glad I took time in the end to detail up the pedestrian paths, as they really were looking quite empty compared to all of the detail which was surrounding them, so just added in some gift stalls, food stalls, trees and billboards, just to decorate. It just adds a little bit more to the scene. And then we have a small lake here using my cliff technique, which may be home to some ducks and small fish. I also really like these information signs, which will tell you information about the species in the habitat. So this asset is an ore storage building, which works really well for animals like sheep here. The asset does come with a pile of ore, so you do need to find a variation without the pile. So this habitat is a mixture of animals. Imagine this to be like a petting zoo where children and their parents can pet the animals and interact with them. The next up is chickens. So this asset was originally a residential home, which I've then edited and converted for the chickens. Then some cows taking shade in another one of the ore storage buildings. And finally, pigs in the last one. So this is just such a cool addition to the game to bring more life to our farms and zoos. So this is a little annoying here though, these lorries delivering and exporting goods. I think I'd rather, these probably weren't functional. So I'm just going to check quickly if I've done all the naming. So, I didn't actually change these, so let's get them all updated. So around the corner is also the skate park asset, which I've converted into another petting zoo. This was all a bit random, but I think it's okay, just something else I could use and have a bit of fun with. And then just a little park area with a gazebo and a dog park. So next we have some bigger wild animal enclosures, which I've converted from the campsite asset. So I think these are working super well, with my texture pack too. Of course, we needed some more security with the fencing on the perimeter, and then a viewing area here at the front with some information signs and a nice open view of the animals. So look, it is a shame that these are cows and not lions, but I think we can just do our best with the limited tools. Like I said, if we look at these from a distance, I really think the effect is there and it's not too obvious. So let's double check we have all the naming. So we have the lion enclosure, the giraffe enclosure, and you can see the orange coloured horses. I think from a distance they aren't too bad a substitute for giraffes. They have the long necks. Finally, the rhino enclosure. So, stocky build, grey colour of some of these pigs, aren't a bad match. So yeah, of course we do need to use a bit of imagination here. And over to the horse track then, and you can see the detailing on the pedestrian paths. And I hope the zoo is charging for all of these advertisements, because based on how many I've placed on the zoo, they must be making an absolute ton of money. But the horse track also came out great, repurposing the American football field. Now I know this type of thing really doesn't belong in a zoo either, but it's just a bit of fun and to show the possibilities. Again, the manicured grass texture is also looking super good in this build, and the dirt textures over the top just for a bit of wear on the track. Next up we have an amphitheatre build, which I love. And yeah, it is a little small, but I think the effect looks great. We don't have a building, so I'm going to need to draw out an area with the district tool just to give this a name. And we'll call this the bear enclosure. And while we're at it, we'll also do the next one and call that the tiger enclosure. Then a little restaurant here and toilet facilities. I've also gone very heavy on layering foliage, which just looks so good with all the different colours. This is a great way to make them feel a bit more realistic, and integrating a bunch of boulders in there alongside them. Some landscaped and manicured gardens here on the far side of the zoo, and the tiger enclosure, which is using a lot of the same techniques, but in a slightly different design. So these buildings here technically aren't attached to the road either, but I've used them to bridge the gap between the height differences, so these three are all merging into one building. And then finally an Asian inspired area. So I was thinking this is home to red pandas and monkeys, but the whole area just came out looking so great. And that's basically it now, so I've shown you around the entire zoo. So this has been a really fun build. I'm quite enjoying the limitations of the game at the moment. It's forcing me to be creative in different ways, to think outside the box. As I mentioned earlier in the build, the theme of the episode turned out to be repurposing. So just because an asset is one thing in the vanilla game, with some mods and a bit of creativity, we can easily turn it into something else entirely. Without this, the zoo wouldn't have been possible in the first place, as we don't have zoo assets. So I hope some of these tips in the video have been helpful. And of course, go and download Find Stuff and get access to all of those branded billboards. So again, I want to thank Dome for his discovery, for sharing their techniques with us. So next up on the channel is going to be some videos focused around Extra Landscaping Tools 3.0, which I can't wait to show you all. This will be out very soon. We also have episode 4 of this series coming up. I mentioned in the previous episode about US build. That wasn't this episode, that is still incoming, but I think the wait will be worth it. Again, if you want early access to my texture pack, Realistic Rivers, you can get this for free right now on my Discord and Patreon. Both are linked in the description. So stick around for some final cinematics of the zoo, but I hope you enjoyed the build, and I'll catch you all again in the next video.
Walking for miles, it helps me clear my head. The sky has the answers, even if the clouds fill it instead. I don't need your worries, need your support to take me there. And when this heart is at its deepest, it will rise up in one big flood.